and wonderful song, and this should be all of our prayers as disciples of Jesus Christ. Now, in our journey of discipleship, Mark teaches us how to live as followers of the way of Jesus Christ. So far in chapter 10, Mark brings out the importance of being a family and the radical faith that is required of us as disciples. Today's passage falls right after Jesus has just talked about his imminent suffering and death on the cross. Hear now God's word to us today, found in Mark chapter 10, verses 35 through 45. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to him and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And he said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left hand in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink you will drink, and with the baptism with which I am baptized you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We find ourselves living in an age of entitlement. As Americans, we expect our government to uphold and protect certain rights and freedoms. We believe that we are rightly entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Younger generations take for granted all the luxuries their technology provides them that did not exist for earlier generations. College professors and school teachers alike will tell you that many students expect to be given breaks on deadlines, and they don't want to be worked too hard. American culture teaches us to push for power, authority, and status, much like the Roman Empire back in the times of the New Testament. Jesus has a completely different idea of power for those who choose to be disciples. Following Jesus entails being a servant and a slave to all, instead of being served. The characters of James and John in this story really annoy me. I mean, they have not been listening to Jesus, because over and over, Jesus has been telling them, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And that they are supposed to enter the kingdom with the heart of a child, not the behavior of one. So obviously they're not getting it. These brothers seem to me like a bunch of spoiled brats. Even worse is how inappropriate their question and its superficiality come when Jesus has just finished predicting his death and torture. Yet, if I'm going to be truly honest, they really get under my skin and rub me the wrong way most because I realize I'm not that different from them. I am pretty sure that this question comes up as they are filled with anxiety because they are desperate to change the subject. I can't imagine more of a downer than their friend and leader just predicting and telling them that he is going to the cross to suffer a shameful death. Many other people, including myself, also have had this same ambition to obtain status in their community by attaching to some of the best leaders. Human nature often drives us to seek out power and control in our lives, whether it's in our family, in our school, in our work, in our community, or even in our nation. This, of course, brings me to our current political election situation. Watching some of the presidential debate displayed a raw struggle for power that felt to me to be extremely hostile. I did not get the sense that either candidate wanted to be a genuine civil servant who was sincerely looking to put their agendas aside in order to best serve the people. The Messiah reverses typical roles of power. He moves us away from thoughts of what will allow us to control more people and more things, and he moves us toward what will allow us to best help and empower others. Jesus does not say that power, authority, and status are bad. Rather, he completely transforms the understanding of leadership. God's kingdom prefers servant-based leadership. Titles like servant and slave are not desirable in our society, and on some levels are completely devoid of prestige. Christians in this text are given our formula for greatness. Become a servant who imitates Jesus through seeking to serve others and not seeking to be served. This does not mean that we are never to be served by others. For in allowing others to give to us and serve us, we are able to empower them. Instead, it is key that we not be expecting to be served, yet when it comes to us, we graciously accept it. Service to others should naturally flow from churchgoers. But we all know that that's not always the case. So we have a little illustration to point this point out.
We don't speak Spanish, but would you join us?
Now, hopefully this was comical in the sense that such a nice person as Ben Caldwell was willing to treat someone so rudely. But we know that it does happen. This usually occurs when we are so focused on ourselves that other people just seem to get in the way of our success and busyness. Hopefully that first character in the scene will not manifest too often in this congregation, and I pray that the second character, played by Richard Durham, will be the prevalent response to someone in need of a hand. This situation also illustrates how having patience and giving our time to another person can be uncomfortable for us and for the one we are serving if there is a language barrier. Yet with a little bit of patience and the desire to communicate using gestures and signs, we are able to get across our message. Now, this congregation is not lacking in women who are willing to serve food and clean up. But when the same people are always doing the service, it can become taxing. I also find it exciting and celebrate that First Presbyterian Church historically has had both pastors and elders who are eager to find ways to serve the community. Our involvement with the Goodland Academy, Titus County Cares, Safety Shelter, Habitat for Humanity, Hospice, the Fuel Up program, and so many more are commendable endeavors of service. Christian mission has everything to do with reaching out to those who are hurting and suffering. So I ask, where can we improve upon our service to others? I invite you to ask anyone that's involved with Circle One to give you some ideas about how we might be able to improve our service. I heard a wonderful story about a Cambodian rice farmer. This farmer from a small village saw a tide pull out at an abnormal time of day, which he immediately understood was a signal that a huge tidal surge was coming. His barn where he had been working was much higher than the rest of the lowlands. And down in those lowlands, the other farmers continued to work diligently. The man had to alert the others of this imminent danger and find a way to get them to move to higher ground quickly. There was absolutely no time to run down and warn them. Instead, to bring these people up out of the lowlands, he chose to set his barn and all of his possessions on fire so that they would immediately see the smoke and come to help, as was their custom. So the villagers rushed up to help, and as they were leaving these low-lying areas, they glanced back and saw a huge wave come and wash away their water buffalo and their tools. When the villagers realized that this man had sacrificed everything in order to save their lives, they realized that they must honor him for his noble service, and eventually raised him to their highest position. This one simple Cambodian farmer sacrificed everything he had in order to save a small group of people. Jesus elicits a similar call to us to be a slave to all, meaning that we are ready to suffer for the good of others. this also begs of us to be in solidarity with those who are suffering. And solidarity, in other words, means walking alongside those who are hurting. Being a slave is about looking after the well-being of another in a way that gives over power to the other person. In other passages in Paul, written by Paul, we are called to be a slave of Christ. Yet here Jesus states, in order to be first in God's kingdom, we must be a slave to all. Now this should come as no surprise, as the two are one and the same. For Jesus says, what you do to the one that was hungry, to the one that was sick, to the one in prison, you do unto me. Jesus uses the language of slave because that is absolutely the lowest position or status one could have in that time. Becoming a slave required a relinquishing of power in order to fully serve another. Thus, in this grand pronouncement, Christ is reversing the system of greatness and high positions. What does that look like for us today, here in Mount Pleasant, in the year of 2012? Those who are willing to give of themselves and put themselves last deserve our honor. We are asked to imitate Christ in his service of the least of these. If we are ready to embark on greatness, the cup of suffering is sure to follow, and we'll have to drink it along the way. If we are ready to embark and be more than whiny disciples with ambition, then we will have to accept the baptism of suffering that is endured time and time again. We as Christians are called to be servants and slaves. This starts with simple acts of service, like we saw in our short skit. And by practicing these small kindnesses, we will be prepared to have the willingness of the rice farmer, to be able to lose it all for the sake of others. Now, as annoying as James and John seem to be in our text today, they were eventually ready to risk it all for the glory of God. Our world seeks to elevate people who do not mind stepping on others in order to get to the top. In God's kingdom, we are to be a step in order to help people reach the top. Service is not about doing something good for the needy. Rather, being a servant means assisting others in reaching their full potential. How might each one of us be called to make the lives of those around us better off? I ask, can this church rise and aspire to its lofty name of first by finding ways to be servant and slave to all? Friends, we have a choice to live an easy life or to live a life full of meaning. The choice is ours. Please stand and join with me now in affirming our faith using the words of the Apostles' Creed, saying, I believe in God the Father Almighty,